Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, my dear panelists. I will have a pleasure today to moderate our discussion, which title is Powering Progress, Unleashing the Potential of Energy Transformation in Central and Eastern Europe. My dear guests will be Maciej Tyburski, expert from Warsaw Institute, graduate in public diplomacy and studies of the East with the Russian Chinese specialization at the University of Gdańsk, and last but not least, Aleksandra Palkova, researcher at the Latvian Institute of International Affairs, PhD international relations student, and senior researcher at Riga Stradins University. Do you want to add something more?
Good evening. Thank you for having me today.
Okay, let's start because probably we'll have quite a long discussion. We will also probably have a possibility to talk with our audience. I will give you one first question, which will be to both of you. First question is, how attractive is the 3C region for investments in energy transformation projects? What do you think, Aleksandra?
I would say that, well, coming from the Baltics, I definitely can share the idea that 3C's initiative is absolutely attractive for the Baltic states, as well as generally, if we generalize for the CEE region, then 3C's initiative has its means. Talking more about perhaps Baltic region, I can say that for each of the 3 different Baltic states, the 3C's initiative has something to offer. For instance, Estonia involves more on the reconstruction of the energy grids. It's about the possibility of having more closer ties and projects within this region and the energy sphere. Latvia involves in the reconstruction of the transport, and then again, of course, also separately on the energy system, but it more focuses on this possibility of having projects related towards that field. As for the Lithuania, it plans to have a project within the 3C's initiative towards offshore and renewables. So each of the countries in the Baltics have, different approaches on how we can instrumentalize and use 3C's initiative, and yet it is absolutely part of the involvement in the 3C's initiative. And that's if we cover the pillar of the energy. But from the other side, if we talk also from the diplomatical view, then 3C's initiative, it's something where all 3 Baltic states is involved also, because they are part of the investment fund. So there is different platforms how 3 different countries interact and how they interact with the countries of the 3C's initiative, and yet that's still popular. For instance, practical example, last year in Riga there was a 3C's initiative forum held. So that's once again showing this popularity of and opportunities as well for the platform.
Mr. Tyburski, The same question, I will maybe repeat it. How attractive is the Trisi region for investments in energy transformation projects?
Well, thank you. To add to what Alexandra just said a minute ago, first of all, as we all know, the Freezes initiative is bringing money to the region and subsequently attracting more capital, boosting economies, and in general having a good impact on region. Since the beginning of the initiative, it had correlation with infrastructure investments like Via Carpathia, Via Baltica, modernization of liquefied natural gas infrastructure. But what I would like to draw our viewers' attention to today, not repeating what Alexandra just said, solar and offshore energy. Those are two areas in which 3Cs initiative may bring the highest amount of money or investments, right? So especially for Baltic and Black Sea, we have huge capability for offshore wind farms, whereas for those southern countries, we have capability of solar farms, right? So but those are only the seas and the central part. But what requires investment and what will definitely attract possible investors are interconnectors, because the electricity from the offshore farms has to be somehow transferred to the demand centers located usually in the center or southern part, right? So this is the first thing that can attract investors. Secondly, not only 3Cs initiative countries, but also CEE countries are rich not only in fossil fuels, but also in iron, copper, or zinc. Those are the materials that may be used for production of batteries or devices required to build electric powered mobility, which currently is a hot topic in the discussion. So it will definitely attract more and more capital going to 3Cs countries. In recent years, we've had many investments that which shows that our region is developing, right? We had a floating terminal in Poland and Lithuania. We had Baltic Pipe. We had LNG terminal in Poland. Latvia and Estonia are developing a cross-country offshore wind farm. Even Hungary in 2017 launched first geothermal heat and power plant. And currently Romania and Bulgaria are discussing a project on joint energy island. So there are many projects going on, even theoretically, that when financed can be sped up and bring more and more to our region. To sum up, there are many opportunities, but there are also bottlenecks like aging infrastructure or lack of policy support that we as a countries and EU should put more focus on.
Okay, next question. It will be also a question to both of you, if you don't mind. Given the geopolitical context, how the Central and Eastern Europe region ensuring energy security while transitioning to more sustainable sources? Are there any concerns or strategies being discussed in this regard? Question to Mrs. Palkova.
Thank you, Alexander. I think to start with, geopolitically, of course, we understand that currently there is a war in our region, in our neighborhood, in our borders. Hence, of course, the first pillar to address is how we can secure our energy security. So this is about energy independence. That's about diversification of the sources. It's how we are able to actually build, and for instance, for the Baltics, of course, and for the Nordic countries, that was the first call, how we can not become further dependent on Russia. And that's also for some countries in Central Central Europe, in this case Germany, an example of the Nord Stream when the countries were dependent on Russia. So the first pillar and trend, if you can phrase it this way, was of course energy independence. And what three Baltic states did, and this is the growing trend, is that all three Baltic states declined to buy gas and from Russia, so gas and oil from Russia, and that's actually something which is growing up initiative from since actually Crimea since 2014, and this is where three Baltic states are stepping right now towards the energy independence, and by that I mean that since this year 2023 January, all three Baltic states politically said that they will not rely on Russian gas or oil. Practically, although I have to mention that, of course, because of the agreement which was signed, this is the reason why on the maps, if you check the energy buying and oil gas map, where you can see all the countries which are connected, you will see practically the numbers that the Baltic states are still have connection with the Russian gas, but politically this decision was made. Of course, the practical side of this agreement is still there existing. The second trend I would say is about the renewables in the CEE region. It's not only about the Baltic states, but again, as I come from the Baltic states, perhaps I will talk more about the Baltic states perspective, is that renewables play a massive role currently in the countries, and they are rebuilding their and ensuring the energy security. By that I mean examples what was mentioned previously, the offshore wind parks, because we can use the sea which we have, and given the fact that the Finland is now become part of the NATO, our sea plus the Nordic Sea is secure to build the energy potential secure neighborhood in the seaside. And the last but not least, I think what is important to talk is the practically abilities of the countries. So coming back for the synergies between the countries. So also the Three Seas initiative actually is a good example how the synergies between the CEE region countries is actually established. Either we're talking about the unique geological structure, which is a case of Latvia, which with integral storage, or we are talking about the countries in the more east, but all of them have this ability to establish the synergy in order to help the energy market actually promote and operate even on a larger scale and more secured. So all of those three factors together, I think, is the trends which is currently what CEE region is trying to address if we talk about this energy security field. But there is, again, a lot of more to cover. Perhaps if there will be future questions, I'm more than happy to discuss also in the practical terms.
It's working home, excuse me for...
An added expert of the energy.
Okay. Excuse me for the cat that interrupted you. You want to add something, or we can go to Maciej? Mr. Tyburski, probably, as I told before, the same question. Given the geopolitical context, how is the Central and Eastern Europe region ensuring energy security while transitioning to more sustainable sources? Are there any concerns or strategies being discussed in this regard? What do you think?
First of all, we have to start with the statement that our region consists of many geographies and climates, different energy mixes, different consumption, different emissions, right? So we sometimes look at our region as a whole, but we have to focus, especially when it comes to security, on particular countries. As Alexandra mentioned, the Russian share was bigger before the conflict, the invasion on Ukraine. Later, the share of Russia in CEE countries dropped, which led up to a rise of prices, especially for fossil fuels. This is a concern, but countries of CEE are dealing with that better and better. So, of course, diversification of energy sources increased and is increasing. Countries are investing in infrastructure, in contracts with different countries like a USA or Qatar. But what I want to mention is that we focused more on regional cooperation after the invasion, which is good. Because many countries imported a lot of gas and coal from Russia. Uh, of course, we didn't get rid of Russian energy in the region. There are even some concerns between countries. I can give the latest example, which is Bulgarian tax on Russian energy, Russian gas being transited in Turk Stream to Hungary through the territory of Bulgaria. So Hungary is now trying to find a solution for that on the EU forum, right? So it's still leading to some small conflicts between the states, which is a concern for us. But every CEE country has a political will to develop the infrastructure and to look for more security. Of course, the Baltic states, as Alexandra mentioned, are planning to desynchronize their energy from Russian grid, as far as I know, by 2025. And then later on, they will synchronize it with the grid of continental Europe, right? Even Hungary and Romania signed a memorandum with Azerbaijan and Georgia on developing underwater electricity cable across the Black Sea. As I mentioned during my answer to first question, countries of CEE will be increasing wind and solar energy in future. The current capacity for those types of energies is 35 gigawatts, and if we will be expanding the market of those energies, we can receive even 196 gigawatts in 2030. So if we will focus on regional cooperation, development of the energy sources, renewable energy sources that will grant us EU funding, then we can even start exporting green energy after 2030. So we will not only have to import that much as before the invasion. We will start to export some energy, which is good and which is giving us the feeling of security on international area.
Okay, thank you very much, Maciej. Alexandra, this will be quite controversial question to you. Not that it's question is of course controversial. Alexandra, do you see the possibility of a return to fossil fuels from Russia or any cooperation in field of energy after the end of the war in Ukraine?
That's a truly controversial question. I would say two dimensions. First of all, it depends on the country and in the region which we are talking to. Coming from the Baltic Nordic perspective, I would say there is no return point back. Our position as a Baltic countries, either especially because we're talking what is happening right now within the context of the war in Ukraine, is not only political but also practical. So I don't see how we will return back to the perspective of having ties with Russia economically on the gas and oil, because it will only will grow with our dependence on Russia, and we are since 2014, since Crimea, we are trying to remove that. This is the reason why 2025 was chosen as a year, because we were planning this initiative since 2014 with the goal to finish desynchronization in 2025. So for me, it's hard to see that we would come back to that point. But of course, there could be countries, example of the Hungary, which can still use the gas and oil of Russia, and they can still have the cooperation with Russia. And there could be different European countries. It's not only about the Central East countries which we are talking here about. It could be also similarly coming back to the Germany. Germany could be also one of the countries who can still, after the war in Ukraine, have the economical ties with Russia. because Europe is dependent on Russia if we talk about our energy system. And let's imagine the scenario after a decade, there could be a new leaders here in the European side as well as in Russia side who can believe in the economical ties, because economically speaking, there is one side, but geographically speaking, Russia is still part of the Europe continent. So we have to, in the end, given the globalization process, have some connections towards Russia. I'm not sure that there'll be exactly if it's all. I'm not sure that there will be energy connections. Because at this momentum, all the countries are trying to desynchronize from the Russia side, but perhaps in the future there could be some other connections. Politically speaking, I think Russia is one player, but we also have to keep in mind this is more globally talking about EU. We have to keep also our dependencies on China in the renewables, and we also have to talk about that. So there is a lot of challenges across the world which we have to take into the account. It's not only about Russia and the practical example of the energy connection towards Russia.
Thank you very much. Maciej, this time question to you, not so controversial. Can you provide an overview of the current state of energy transformation in Central and Eastern European region, the key trends and challenges? Not too long, maybe.
Of course, for sure.
How we say it in Polish, let's make a dot on, mówimy kropka na D. Let's make the discussion.
All right. So as I've mentioned before, the Russian invasion on Ukraine has sped up the transition among CEE countries. Of course, we are reducing carbon emissions. We are going through decarbonization and diversification. Of course, we are for us as a CEE countries, it takes us more energy to produce 1 unit of GDP than the Western Europe. And as I said during a response to first question, we have wind and solar potential among our countries. As I'm coming from Poland, I can give the example of our country, how it deals with transition currently. We are building nuclear power plants. We are building small modular reactors. We are making efforts to extend our LNG terminals, the capacity. It gets bigger and bigger. We are targeting even 6 gigawatts of offshore energy by 2040. But when we speak about CEE as a whole, each country has a different mix, different capabilities. We are focusing in Poland on gas, renewables, and nuclear power. For example, Lithuania is focusing on renewable energy sources. It doesn't use nuclear energy. Estonia wants to go fully into renewables by 2030, so no nuclear power, no coal, no gas. Whereas Hungary is quite stabilized when it comes to the mix, because around 15 to 20% of renewables, same for coal, and the government in Budapest is building new reactors for their power plant packs. Czech Republic, same, going more and more into nuclear energy. New reactors are incoming. So to just put this dot, as you mentioned, Alexander, even recently, the European Union has stated that nuclear energy is non-emission energy. Therefore, countries will be more and more eager to invest in it. We will get the funds for it. So the current transition can be divided into going more and more into renewables and nuclear energy. But for some countries, especially those that are depending on coal, as Poland, we can use gas as a transitional fuel. It's good for transition. It doesn't give such amount of emissions as coal. So going through gas to nuclear energy and renewables we will make transformation in our region better and better.
Thank you very much. Okay, I will give you an extra question, but don't worry, it will be quite easy for both of you. Alexandra, mm, Latvia, the Baltic states, you have a new, quite solid ally, new security star and NATO member, Finland. What do you think? How can cooperation with Baltic states, with Finland in case of energy, and also mm, in the future that Finland can be also part of 3C's initiative in Central Eastern Europe? What is your opinion about Finland and your cooperation in those fields?
Thank you. Good question. Absolutely can answer that immediately. On the practical terms, all three countries actually have a connection to the Finland, and we are talking here about the liquid LNG terminal connection. We are talking about projects. We are talking about connections in the offshore. We are talking about renewable energy goals. So there is quite a lot of synergies because it's also the mindset between the countries, the Baltics and the Nordics. So there is quite a lot of different practical examples and projects and possibilities of the interaction. And they already are in place if we're talking about the energy grid connections. So, and I think in the potential of the 2 and 5 years and even decades, we will have even more different connections in the interactions. Also, as you mentioned, Finland being part of the NATO, so it will be also about maritime security, that will be about infrastructure, critical infrastructure aspects, and a lot of more. Additionally to that, the factor of the Russia is absolutely even more close, creating more closer ties in the field of the energy. But I would say that despite having a good connection to the Finland, we have one more challenge, and that's actually maybe a small add point, last dot on the I to what we previously spoke about. I think the challenge right now, currently in the Baltic states, is actually the society, because the society have to transform as well. Because we're having a lot of different projects and transformation, but society and the mind of the society have to go with this synergy of the government and decision makers as well. So that's like last dot from my side.
Thank you very much. Maciej will be taking part in conference in Sofia this weekend. This time question to you, because both of us, we are preparing to this. What do you think about the Western Balkans? There are challenges, threats, chances for this region to be part of regional security and energy system.
Before answering the question, I will just speak about one point that Alexandra mentioned. That was a very good point about society. I have to give an example of Polish society here, because we a few years ago we got a new program called, let's say in English, Your Electricity, which is a program that allows donations for up to 5,000 PLN for micro photovoltaic installation, which is around 5 to 10% of value of photovoltaic installation. And people started installing it so much that in years 2020, 2023, we add even 10 gigawatts of energy. So the power is in society. That's a good point that has to be brought to attention. And coming back to your question, Alexander, Western Balkans is a region, is a different region than the rest of CEE, especially because of lack of funds for transformations. As they are not in EU, there are not many transformation funds for them to be used. First of all, I would start with still Russian influence, right? That we have in Serbia now. I mentioned previously about this Bulgarian tax. This is targeting Serbia as well, that is receiving the gas by Turk Stream. And what is important to say that in Balkans, for years, low energy prices mean political power. That is the point that we have to be aware of. Because as Alexander answered on the question of comeback of Russian influence, that is why we need to speed up the accession of Balkan countries, even two countries by 2030, to reduce and minimize the risk of Russian influence coming back to the region. There are, of course, some investments or ideas for investments going on among the Balkans on interconnectors and stuff, but those countries have old infrastructure, many bottlenecks, such as grid congestion, bad spatial planning, even sometimes a bit of corruption in some states. That is why quick accession, of course, reasonable accession, but quick accession to EU and the funds for transformation are crucial for those countries to develop and conduct a fair transformation.
Do we have
Alexander,
maybe
we
some?
cannot hear you. Okay, now it's fine.
Do you hear me? Okay. Maybe we have some questions from our audience, because I'm not sure how does it work. Okay. Okay, maybe let's make some last question, because let's make last question. Maciej, I asked, there will be also a question to both of you. I asked you about the Western Balkans, and let's imagine that Ukraine after the war. How do you see the Republic of Ukraine being part of the system in energy and security? Maybe mainly energy because it's topic, but for me, energy. And nowadays, energy means security. It's my credo. It's Maciej. Maybe you will continue, okay?
Okay, thank you. Of course, we have ongoing conflict, but Ukraine energy system still operates, but is being regularly bombed by Russian forces. For sure, after the invasion, after finishing the war, we will have to. We as a CEE countries and European Union and the other states will have to give a lot of funds for rebuilding the Ukraine, and this includes energy infrastructure. Ukraine can be beneficial for my country, for Poland, but also for the CEE, especially when it comes to gas transit and previously coal transit, but now it's not an issue because we are decarbonizing our economies. But for sure, one of first points to rebuild after the civilian infrastructure, we should focus on energy infrastructure investments in Ukraine, which will lead us to building more and more connections, especially in gas area.
Alexandra.
Well, practically speaking, I would say that given the fact that Ukraine was for the long time part of the Eastern Partnership and EU neighborhoods, there was a project on the energy grid since 2005. So since 2005, Ukraine and Europe, in this case European Union, has been working together on the energy sphere and energy infrastructure. So if we know already that there is at least two connections of the systems where Ukraine has the connection towards the European grid, and given this, talking about future reconstruction and talking about future possibilities after the war, I would say that first of all, a lot of things now it's developed a lot of things now matter on the case of the EU side. So it's not only about when can talk about the war finalizing the prospect. Personally, I would say the war will end in the 6 or 10 years. So that's quite a long time. So hence, right now, the important aspect is actually what is the EU still doing with the Ukraine. It's about candidate status, it's about the accession talks, and in the futuristic scenario, if we want to have Ukraine connected to the Europe, and we want to have secure neighborhood, which is the main neighborhood idea initially. If we talk about EU ideas, we have to talk about the current state of mind of the European Union. What does EU have to do right now, and what EU must do right now in order to secure the energy. As for the scenario of the future of what will happen afterwards, of course, that's reconstruction processes. That's about or funds or possibilities, and practically speaking, that's about also political willingness. Will that the next politicians who will be elected after the European elections and afterwards will still think about reconstruction of Ukraine and about possibilities of energy, how we can secure our energy grids there. So I think there is two dimensions at the same time. I don't know, was it clear enough? But if you have a follow-up question, I'm more than happy to answer that.
No, it was very clear. Thank you very much. For me, it's Maciej, Alexandra. I think it's quite late, and we don't have any question from our audience. It was a pleasure to host you today. Thank you, my dear friends from the Warsaw Institute, for inviting me to lead today's discussion, and see you also not only online but offline. Maciej, we see each other in Sofia, Alexandra, or in Riga, or in Warsaw. We are waiting for you, or see you in the future.
Or in Brussels.
Or in Brussels,
Or in
of course, yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. It was
Bye.
a pleasure for me. See you. Bye.